Joining us tonight. I'm going to speak to you about finding the right fit. So I appreciate you taking some time out of your evening. So first I'll give a presentation and we'll talk about 20 minutes. During the presentation, I'm not going to stop for questions, although there is a moderator who might help answer some of them in chat for you as you go along. But we will take those questions at the end as much as time allows. So if you think of anything during the presentation, please use the question button and ask us some questions that I can help you with at the end of the presentation. So when you're getting started thinking about your son or daughter going to college, it's important to think about college planning essentials. So the first place to start is starting to learn about the attributes of a student and thinking about what are the unique things, their personality, their interests, what kind of school environment, how social are they, what kind of school setting is best for them, and what will help get them to where they want to be in terms of college. So usually you do that by understanding the students, trying to, help them recognize a few things about themselves and then learning about the different qualities of the college. So there are about 15 different main attributes of colleges, things from size, location, program accessibility. Sometimes students want spectator sports. Sometimes they want to be near a city. Others want to be in a college town. Lots of different factors out there. But kind of understanding where they are on the different, qualities of a college is really important in making that match. Those qualities are things that you can enter into a college search tool once you've kind of figured out what they're looking for. But I think it's important to first think about the student before just sort of randomly choosing some things. Really think what would help the student most in terms of size, location, academic major, access to internships, research, what are they trying to study and where will that actualize itself best? And then making a list that has, using your college search and matching with you, building that initial college list and taking some time to learn more about the schools, using some resources, talking with college reps, talking with other students, gathering a lot of information and starting to learn which schools are starting to become your favorites on this list. And maybe some fall off and you replace them with some better options as well. And I think that's a natural and important part of the process. Then understanding what is the college timeline. You really should have a good understanding of when students should be doing this. So when they're sophomores, juniors, you can start to talk about colleges. Maybe you'll go on a vacation and you'll want to go on a college campus. I think you can learn lots of interesting things from similar campuses. For example, if you've been on University of Washington's campus, it's not largely different from a lot of other large research institutions in other parts of the country, with the exception of sort of the setting, but they have a lot of similar attributes. So possibly, even spending some time here in Seattle, looking at you can go to University of Washington, Seattle U, Seattle Pacific, maybe up to Western, and you're experiencing lots of different types of schools, lots of different sizes with different philosophies going on. So understanding that timeline, that you're building the list, your list should be pretty well set by the end of your junior year. You probably should work on a resume, ask your college letter writers, not to write yet, but just kind of identify, who they are and see if they'd be interested in doing that for you. And then also getting, some ideas for your personal statement essay going. So you're ready to kind of put those applications together in the fall of senior year with a little less stress. So when you're getting started, try not to be scared. Start with a positive mindset. You'll hear lots of stories of, it being very difficult to get into colleges. The majority of colleges, somewhere in the 80% range, are admitting more students than they deny. So colleges want to be in the business of admissions, not in denials. So think of it that way. You can do that by, being an educated consumer and being ready to learn and kind of understanding the process and really building a nice balanced list that's going to help do that. If you want to understand some of the frenzy and some of the reasons why people get worried about college admissions, you can go to this website, Less High School Stress, which is hopefully, the goal for everyone is to go through this process with less stress. But there are lots there are probably 60,000, I think it quotes, that more high school graduates now than there were when parents like you and I were when we were looking for colleges. So there's more competition, particularly at some of those more selective institutions where they really haven't grown in the amount of students that they're taking in. Um, but be assured that there are many, many schools throughout the nation, and there's the perfect place for your student at a handful of different schools. So try to think of it that, don't be worried about it, but understanding kind of the process will really help. So what is the right college fit? The right college fit is really individual for a student. It's their match academically, socially, and financially to colleges. So in those three areas. Academics has to do with the student's attributes, their academic record that would include their GPA in a variety of different formats. Colleges might look at it and, broken down in just math and science, and they might look sometimes at humanities, and sometimes they don't look at freshman year, and sometimes they weight grades. Which really, they're looking at many more data points than you will ever know. But they do consider course rigor. So they want students to take core courses all the way through graduation when possible, and particularly taking academic challenges in areas that they are interested in and can do well in. So I get a lot of questions about, is it better to take AP or a regular class? Take those challenges when you can still do well. And that you're interested in, you want to do the work, but keep your GPA up as well. It's important. Some schools are looking at test scores. About 70% of the schools in the nation are test optional right now. So there are many times when a test score is just an extra tool a student can use in their profile if they have a good test score. So it kind of takes the pressure off. If a student wants to try to get a good test score, they may not have to use it if they don't get the kind of score that they want in a lot of instances. But your match for academics really are the academics, basically your GPA, including course rigor, and your test scores sometimes is your academic match. You want to consider your admissions to whatever they commonly admit, the middle 50 percentile scores, and you'll know if you're right in the middle there, you're a great possible match. If you're a little bit to the right of that, you're a little higher than their average student, you're the kind of student that they're going to try to entice with some merit scholarships if that's their system. And if you're below the 25th percentile, and you're the kind of student who's trying to get into school that's basically a bit of a reach for them, and so the odds are a little bit lower. You should really know kind of where you are compared to schools when you're trying to apply. So having that balanced list, we'll talk more about that. You want to know a school's admission rate, their retention rate, which is how many kids come back after freshman year for sophomore year. So happy kids come back at like an 80 to 90% retention rate usually. So they know they chose a good school that they want to be at and that it's functioning well for them. If it's not, most kids transfer before sophomore year. So that's where you see that change. Graduation rates look both at the 4 and 6 year, because sometimes schools have a higher graduation rate for 6 years, and some majors just take a little bit longer to go through, like engineering is about a 4.5 year major in the first place. So don't always only look at the 4 year, also look at the 6 year, because it doesn't mean that a kid graduated at 6 years. It might be, 4 years and a semester or 5 years. So keep that in mind. So you guys have Naviance available to you, and you can look at the college profile, and you can look at kind of where recent grads, how they've been successful and where you would be sort of in a scatter plot of admissions. So kind of use that to predict, like, are you a good match for this school, or is this a reach for me, or am I likely to get in there? You want to have most of the schools good match. You want to have a few that are reaches if you really are motivated to try to go to a place that's tough to get into. You want to make sure you have at least one that's a sure thing for you. Social environment. This is kind of the fun part. What will you get involved in? Colleges really want you to get involved in something, an activity, a club, environment, something in the community, really get involved in the city somehow, if that's what you're into. But they would like college students who are happy and ready to get involved. Financial affordability, that really has to do with value. Sometimes colleges have a cost that looks a little bit more like a sticker price because they have a merit scholarship model. Other schools, that sometimes the more competitive schools, make the students who get in pay full price when they're able, so that they can also take in some students who need some financial help. So understanding what kind of school you're applying to is important as well, and realizing that the cost isn't always exactly what it says on the screen. Sometimes that differs due to some tuition discounting and enticing students who are stronger than the average applicant to come to their school. Some colleges like Gonzaga will give almost everyone a merit scholarship, but the students who are the stronger students get a bigger merit scholarship than sometimes the students who just barely got in. So understand that. What are colleges looking for? Obviously, we talked about wanting students to take, core courses, English, math, science, history, sometimes world language, all the way through high school, if possible. Sometimes, some of those don't fit. Sometimes people are done with world language because it's not their thing. Just understanding that they're taking a reasonable amount of rigor that they can handle that's appropriate for each individual. Colleges do know like what courses are generally offered at a school, and a strong school like yours has lots of things to choose from. So making sure to take a reasonable amount of rigor that you can do well in is important. Getting to know your teachers so that you have good relationships with them, and making a resume when you're asking for letters of recommendation are good ways to make sure you're going to get personalized, quality letters of recommendation. Applications that really stand out at some of the stronger, more competitive schools are those when students can give some examples in the shorter answer questions about how they've explored something of intellectual curiosity, how they've taken it a little bit further, whether, they're interested in computer science and they've learned some coding, or they've done a project, or they're interested in medicine, they've maybe done a job shadow, something like that. Besides that, extracurricular activities are generally thought of more the organized things, but I also tell students, like, if they've self-studied something significant. Sometimes I've had a kid study language, or sometimes they're a leader of like a national club that's not part of their school. You definitely can add those things on your resume. It doesn't just have to be things through the school. Contributions to your community are important because a lot of schools would like to know how you're going to take this education and benefit sort of the larger community or the greater good beyond just taking as a student, like also giving back, taking this knowledge and solving a world problem of some kind. That comes up commonly on a Common App. And being able to make a case that you understand what's unique about a school, what's unique about their major or their opportunity, and showing that you have attributes that would really do well in that type of environment and really thrive. So fit that matters, where students can honestly, fit is about students experiencing the most personal growth at college. So how can you become your best self, not only during college, but also after college? So having the right majors, the things that you're interested in studying, or possibly exploratory majors that teach you about like the different majors. Some colleges, like for engineering, will teach you about different types of engineering at the beginning, or different types of business, and help you explore that more, because it's pretty tough when you're like 17 to know exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life. So colleges sometimes want to help you make that exploration. Size, having it affect not only just the amount of people on your campus, but also like who's in your classrooms, how well you can have conversations. Does your professor know your name? What type of research is there? Or are there also graduate students fighting for that? Sometimes it's better to be at a smaller school where there are fewer projects, but maybe easier access because you have those relationships and ability to get in the labs. There are no right and wrongs. I think it's just about figuring out what is the right fit for a student. When we talk about environment, that's kind of the fun part. Like kids will kind of say like, oh, I like the vibe on campus, like that's hard to measure, which makes those college visits so important if possible to get out on campus. I know you can't visit every school on your list, but hopefully you can visit one or two that are near the top of your list eventually. And if you don't get out before your application, sometimes you can also go to admitted student days before you have to decide when spring of your senior year. So yeah, and then also kind of thinking about outcomes. Like, so some schools have really good career services that are great at, having internships both in college and job placement after you get out of college, or helping you get to, graduate school and having those kinds of experiences and letters of recommendation. So when you build a college list, you want the majority of your schools, whether this would be an example of like 10 schools, whether you're at 10 schools, or whether you're fewer at 8, or maybe you're looking at a more selective competitive list, maybe not only for the college, but maybe for that major, maybe you're up at 12 or 14 schools. Honestly, I think that's a good limit. I don't think anybody really needs to apply to more than that if they've balanced their list well. Typically, like I said, match schools are the ones that your academic match, GPA, test scores if looked at, right? Reach schools are ones that are a little bit, you're not quite into that middle 50 percentile. Likely schools are ones that you're above and you may be offered merit scholarships. And sometimes, students choose to go to a school that maybe has stats slightly lower that they can get merit scholarships, but also, those are the great places to look for things like honors colleges. So, sometimes you can go to a school within a school and be in a tighter population with a little bit more challenge, a little bit more preferential opportunities too, by looking at that. Some ways to know about colleges if you don't know about them is to use the Fisk Guide. Ted Fisk was a New York Times writer who writes a little bit more biased or comparative reviews of colleges. So instead of telling you everything that's bright and shiny about a school like college marketing does, he does a little more comparison, teaches you a bit about like the programs, the setting, residential life, a little bit about sports, a little bit of everything. And then also you can see what are the strongest programs and where do other people apply, which can be really useful sometimes. If you really like a school, you can go, oh, wow, a lot of people who like this school also like these other schools, and you can check them out as well. College Navigator is an example of one of several different college search tools. Here's when you're going to put your college factors into a search engine, and you can use it to generate a list of schools. Typically, you want it to filter from using things like location, size, you're using academic major, you're using selectivity. I don't know, maybe you want to be able to watch football. Some people do. There are lots, or maybe you want to participate in a certain activity at college. There's lots of things there that you can use to narrow down. I'd recommend narrowing down to about 50 schools to kind of look at. That seems to be a nice number to be able to look at enough for a sort of wider search, but it's not overwhelming. It's also not so tight that you don't get enough of a spread to start out with. So I'm kind of narrowing that down that way. College Express is an excellent website for just sort of unique lists of college majors. There are lots of different interesting things on that website. Colleges That Change Lives are school reviews written up in a book by Pope, and it basically focuses on student-centered education. So times when colleges have really built programs that have made excellent advances for their students, both in college and their way out the door. Talk with people who have attended college or recent graduates. So kids who are in college right now are probably a student's best source of accurate information about what's happening at that college. So if your students know somebody who's a sophomore or a junior at school and can go visit, that's a great opportunity. Working your search. So colleges want to talk to students. So I know parents get really excited, and you're probably the ones watching this presentation tonight. Encourage your son or daughter to reach out to college reps, either interacting with them when they visit their high school, or taking them on the 90-minute campus tours, or doing, admitted student days after they've already been admitted. There are lots of ways to interact with college representatives. Colleges love it when they get smart emails from students who have asked a question that they can't easily find on a website and are willing to reach out and talk to a rep. That kind of shows maturity and that they're also thinking deeply about their experience. Sometimes to kind of know what's going on in different schools and departments, students can follow them on social media. It's a great way to kind of know some of the things that are happening on campuses. And they should know that when they open an email that was sent directly from a college, the colleges can see like how long they've spent on each page, looking at the information. Have they clicked, into the department and learned more and followed a few more links, or did they just click in and click right out? Colleges have, they can see that actually, and not everyone knows that that's something that college is paying attention to, like how much research are your students doing on universities? When you get out on campus, the Pocket Guide here is a good resource to use to think of a few questions to ask when you get out there. So having one or two questions, having looked at a basic profile enough to understand, like, okay, I basically know like how many students are at this school, and I understand the selectivity, and I know what kinds of things happen on this campus generally. That way, when you go on your tour, you can ask a little bit better questions. I always advise students to ask their tour guides a little bit more personal information, because they're given a script of pretty tight information to talk about on a tour. But you can say like, oh, where did you live when you were a freshman? That was enlightening to me. Like when I was on Duke's campus, for example, the freshmen live about 20 minutes away from campus on a separate campus, which you would have never known, because they show you some dorms, on a lot of campuses, not Duke specifically, but on a lot of campuses, they'll show you a dorm that's like right in the middle of the action. And then you realize like, well, probably most of the freshmen don't actually live there. A lot of them live a little bit farther out. So that's just an example. Or asking a student who's near graduation what they're planning to do, or what their experience is, or what other schools they applied to. It's fun to find out more information. If you want to interact with college reps in another way, the NACAC is doing virtual college fairs. And in our area, that's the option. But PNACAC, which is our regional Association for College Admission Counseling, is coming to Seattle University on April 22nd. So lobster reps will be around high schools and at that fair. Understanding marketing. So know that colleges, will send lots of bright and shiny mail, and, be very flattering and tell you all these great stats about them, and like, oh, you should apply here if you haven't yet. They'll even send seniors like free applications sometimes in the fall, even after students have a list and they're like already probably done with some of their other applications. I encourage students to only do the free applications if it's a college that they're truly interested in, that was part of their conversation in the first place, or should become part of their conversation. Otherwise, you're just sort of like adding to the sort of admissions selectivity illusion. So students should be true to themselves in that, and realize that's a pretty big business marketing machine going on behind the scenes there for colleges. They'll get a lot of emails like we talked about before, so set up a separate email or set up a folder for filtering that mail there, because even after they, decide on a school and might commit somewhere, they'll still, even through the summer, are going to get mail from colleges saying like, hey, would you like to, maybe come to our school instead? So sometimes that can be a lot. Also, so students are asked on their applications commonly whether they would like to be texted. And so, some of my students feel comfortable with that. A lot of them are like, no, I don't want these colleges texting me all the time, and are like, I'd rather them send me email. The thing is, I tell students that, okay, I know you guys aren't really all about email, so you're going to have to check your email on a regular basis, like twice a week, to make sure, especially, in the time when you're waiting for your admissions, to see if they need information or they're communicating with you in a way. So how parents can help. Set aside a regular time to listen. Try not to ask daily about, the process and what's happening, or if they've turned this in, or try to have, for seniors, maybe a weekly time that you talk to them. And, when we're back in junior year, maybe even in sophomore year, maybe like once a month, kind of ask how they're doing. I like to use college conversation cards. You can get them on Amazon. They're written by a University of Boulder professor. They have some pretty interesting things you can talk about, and they also have a coordinating book that you can read that goes through a lot of different topics about what you might need to know for being on campus. That's in that list of different books that might be interesting to read. You can also, one of the best ways that parents can help is help plan visits to college campuses, which is really common to go out around midwinter or, spring break to go see campuses. Try to go when college campuses are full of students. when they're empty, they just don't have a good energy, and it's hard to kind of read. Like if kids can say like, "Oh, I feel like my people are here," that part is really important as well. If you can't go to a campus when students aren't there, I've done it before too. I do kind of wonder, my own son did not have as good a response to school when we went, we were summer and vacationing in an area and like, let's go see the campus. Well, the campus was nice, but just didn't kind of feel it afterwards. And I think that might have contributed just without the students there. Just discuss restrictions if there are, as far as like how close you would like them to go to school and if there's cost restrictions. Um, Empower the students to make the decision. It's their first big decision that they're going to make. Obviously, give them guidance, give them some feedback, but make them feel like they get to decide kind of where they're going to college and how they're going to take advantage of that opportunity. And stay positive. Encourage student efforts along the way. There are a lot of benchmarks and lots of things to praise them about. In the end, choose the college that's right for you. What does that mean? So think about it, like basically what a student does in college, like their experience, like how they're going to get involved in, how hard they're working, how networking, all these things are a better predictor of their happiness and their success after college than the name of their school. So just trying to figure out, where is the college, or where are the handful of colleges really that are the best places for my kid to go to school. In the spring, I think success is like having more than one choice, right? You don't want to go to just the only school that's a choice. You want to like have a handful of schools where you'd be successful. So 2 or 3 that are really enticing to a student is good news in spring of senior year. A great problem to have. All change, even positive change is stressful. So be patient. This is the first time they've really thought about, moving out of the house and being on their own. So sometimes they'll be excited and other times they'll get a little nervous about that. A good school, that's the one that's best for that individual student. The college application, it's hard work. Take some time to celebrate, along the way. And, when a student makes a decision, it's usually a really happy time and gets exciting. So here's some great websites that you can look at. This will be posted in the same place that you logged on to this conference. So I won't go through them like in detail, but some college planning timelines, searches, things we've talked about. Niche, it's a like Yelp for college students. I love it. It's great. It helps students have some ratings, like a report card about dorms and food and things they also want to hear about, but they also talk about which programs are best, and students can also leave just open reviews of whatever they want to talk about. I do caution students to take it with like a grain of salt, like understand that people tend to leave reviews when they're happy or they're upset. So there's not always a lot in the middle, but just kind of knowing where all the different sources of your information are and that it's all important, and then it has to come through the student's filter. If you're looking for someone to help you more individually, HECA is a place where you can find consultants if you want. We talked about colleges that changed lives, NCAA clearing houses for student athletes, people who want to play sports in college. And now we will move to questions. So I will hand it over to Scott there.
Thanks, Kristen. So there's been a couple of questions regarding specific majors. So a couple about, if you're going to pursue a medical degree, a lot of our students are looking for computer science or some sort of business degrees. So with the specific majors in mind, what do you suggest they do in this whole journey of finding the right fit?
Yeah. Yes. So medicine comes to mind particularly. I think it was 3 years ago. I talked to the rep from Carroll College because I had heard that they were getting better admissions rates to University of Washington's medical school than University of Washington was getting for its own schools, meaning the undergraduates at University of Washington were under more competition and were placing less than Carroll College, which is a tiny little place in Montana. So I went out to talk to them I went and did a visit and saw what they're doing. What people who are evaluating medical students, they're not only looking for like really, good pre-med lineup and courses, obviously that's really important, but they're also looking for experience in research, in hands-on experiences, in being able to get into nearby hospitals, in having professors that know them really well and that are dialing up their experiences to just what they need to get into graduate school, and they're writing them awesome letters of recommendation. So building relationships, having a great experience, paying attention to which schools are having better placements. So we had this for medical, we had this association, it's like WAMI, that goes into, and it's the acronym is for some of the states in the West. There are different amount of slots allowed for different areas into, so they, it's based on basically on population, right? So it's more competitive over here in Western Washington. There's a lot more schools, undergraduate schools, and a lot more applications coming in. So that's like one of the toughest places to get through to medical school. Sometimes the more remote areas are having a little bit better time getting their students into medical school. So I think if it were me, and I have a daughter who's a sophomore thinking about like medicine, not only thinking about like the big public schools, but also giving some of those smaller liberal arts schools that have strong sciences a chance, because sometimes they're offering really good individual opportunities that really will lend well for applying to medical school. And then if you're thinking about coming back to medical school to a highly desirable place like University of Washington, you can do that for your graduate school opportunity. So that's some advice.
That is so cool. And a lot of times the smaller schools are going to be offering a lot more merit opportunities and things like that. They're going to want to recruit those kids like crazy. So
absolutely.
All right. I think all the other questions have already been answered by either your program or some personal responses. And we're at the end of our time. So just on behalf of our school and the district, thank you so much for all of your great expertise and this presentation. We really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Yes, thanks for sharing your time tonight.
And you'll see the slide that's up right now. If you can scan that code and leave feedback for us, we're constantly working on improving this this conference and trying to make it as great as we can for all of you. So if you could take a few minutes to fill that out, we'd really appreciate it.
That's great. And don't forget, the presentation's also posted on the conference link as well. So you can get any of those links or resources